Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I see that we've got quite a few of you coming in here. Thank you for being prompt. And I'm going to go ahead and get started. I know that most of us are parents, and so I'm sure we have all had a long day. I just wanted to come to you pretty real tonight. So I've got the same outfit I've been wearing for 4 days on right now. I have a laundry hamper and who knows what strewn on the floor behind me. So this is real life. And that is what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about real life. And here you are at the If You've Got a Picky Eater webinar. I am really grateful that you have prioritized joining me. I have tried to pack a ton of valuable information into this presentation. And if you have any questions that come up throughout the event, please put them into the chat. You can see this is a webinar format, so we're not going to see everybody who's here, but you get to see my presentation and we can still hang out. And awesome, Lacey, so glad that you could end up making it. I'm not always great at seeing the chat, but I'm going to do my best. I've got a pretty big screen, so I have a lot that I'm looking at as I'm navigating all of this. And this is my first time doing this type of format, so I appreciate you being my guinea pigs for that as well. So yeah, just put any questions you have into the chat and I will definitely get to them at the end if I don't see them or can't answer them as we're going, but you can put them in at any point in time. And to kick off our event, I would love for you to chat in what brought you here. Obviously, I know what the title is, and so I can guess that that is part of the reason. But what are your specific pain points that made you sign up for a webinar called If You've Got a Picky Eater? I know that one part of being a parent is that the day-to-day can feel like our challenges are overwhelming and bigger than anyone else's and lonely. And I just want you to know that wherever you're at in your journey, that with feeding your kids, that you're not alone. Likely other parents and caregivers here right now experience similar or exactly the same challenges you do. Laura getting her kids to eat more plants, Louise eating struggles with 3-year-old, getting her to eat what you serve. Yes, not snacks all the time. Lacey says, my child doesn't like vegetables unless I put them in a smoothie. Hey, but that's great. So that's a win. Stay positive. He eats pretty healthy, but you want him to have more good stuff. And trying to help kids eat a balanced meal. These are all so good. I bet you can all relate to each other on that. And we will talk through some of this. And then if you feel like you have a more specific question to your situation, to your kids, please feel free at the end to let me know. I would estimate I probably have about a 40-ish minute presentation to share with you, and I'm going to cover a lot. So just enjoy, sit back. Hopefully you maybe have a warm drink or at least some water that you can sip on as we go through this. Also, before I forget, stick with me until the end for a special gift that I've put together for you to help you have just a one-page takeaway of lots of tips, kind of summarizing what I'm going to go over, but so you can quickly reference that throughout your time trying to feed your kids. Okay, so before I dive in, I often forget to introduce myself. I am Emily Forbes, the founder and solopreneur at Love and Plants. I'm a plant-based nutritionist and chef. I have been helping people one-on-one with their health and nutrition since 2015, and I founded the Plentiful Plate meal plan subscription in 2017. I'm also currently working on getting my master's in nutrition because what mom doesn't want just one more thing on her plate, right? But I truly love what I do so much that it is something that fuels every decision that I make. So I am a mom. I have been on this parenting journey with you. For 2.5 years, my daughter Summer was born very end of 2018. She has a robust personality, and I enjoy sharing her shenanigans on my social media. So if you follow me, especially on Instagram, sometimes her photos pop up on my posts, but definitely in my stories. Yesterday, she went swimming in the rain that we were having after she stripped herself completely naked. So I took a somewhat discreet picture and shared that because it brought me joy, and I always hope to bring others joy as well. So while I've only been feeding Summer for 2.5 years, my experience working with kids actually spans many more. I've been teaching kids cooking classes for about 9 years and studying ways to encourage healthy eating habits all along the way. I know that you do so much. We all do as parents. And while I can talk until I'm blue in the face about why I think it's worth the time investment to understand feeding kids a healthy diet, I don't want to discount that there are areas that other than food that are important in raising healthy kids. And you may know more about some of the areas that I do not. I know there are some of you who are further along on your journey of being a parent than I am. But this is an area I do have a lot of expertise in, that I've been working in for a long time, that I've had a lot of success in. So I do want to just share with you my knowledge and hopefully save you some of the time and effort of doing that groundwork in this area all by yourself. I have a disclaimer before we jump in. I mean no disrespect to your specific story with anything I may say. If at any point you think, well, you don't know my child, you are right. No one knows your child the way that you do. I am here to teach based on the dozens of children that I have worked with. There can always be an outlier. That may be your child, but I do encourage you to really consider if there are any areas I talk about that you can make tweaks to your current routine, and that you persevere in your desire to feed your child a healthy diet, because it really does matter. And I know that you know that, because if you didn't, you wouldn't be here. So let's get into why it's important. While I trust that you believe feeding your kids is healthy, I also acknowledge that knowledge is power. So I want to share a few reasons it really does deserve a level of priority when we pick our battles. But also, by the end, I hope that I can help you view food as not a battle, because it doesn't have to be. Let me tell you about epigenetics, if this is something you're not familiar with. And if you're not a nutrition nerd like me, I'm guessing that you might not know about it. Epigenetics is a study of the impact food and lifestyle has on gene expression. We are all born with the genes we're born with. You can't change your genes. Yet, science has now shown we can change how our genes are expressed. You may be predisposed to things like cancer, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, high cholesterol, etc. However, we have the ability to impact whether or not these conditions express themselves in our lives, which means we can also help our children through their diet and lifestyle have better gene expression throughout their lives. Epigenetics tells us that we not only what we eat, but what our mothers ate impacts our child's genes. So when my daughter Summer developed inside of me, all of her eggs were formed in her ovaries. So my diet and lifestyle while I was pregnant has influenced the DNA of any children that Summer may have someday. And my maternal grandmother did not necessarily have the healthiest habits. She would have been pregnant with my mom at a time that there wasn't as prevalent of processed food, but she was a smoker. And so the egg that I came from was created inside of my mom while she was in my grandmother's womb. It's kind of wild. But even though my grandmother smoked, I have so much control over my genes being expressed in a healthy way. And my mom's choices while she was pregnant with me and how she fed me also have a great impact on this. I mean, it's just the coolest thing ever. I feel like it gives us so much more control than trying to just blame everything on our genetics. And even though I'm giving female examples, partially because that's my story, I have a daughter and whatnot, and it can be just easier to comprehend that the female inside the mom develops the eggs. I also want you to know that epigenetics definitely also can come from and be impacted from a father's side. So nobody's off the hook here. Everybody plays a role. The next area is the microbiota, the microbiome, gut bacteria, another relatively new area of nutrition research, but one you've likely heard at least something about. We are learning that the composition of a person's microbiome sends signals to their brain about what foods they crave. So, if your child eats a heavily processed food diet, their microbiome will send signals to eat more processed food. The food we eat feeds our gut bacteria. It's living just like we are, so it also needs some kind of fuel to be able to reproduce. And if we have an unhealthy gut, it wants fed more unhealthy food. If we can generate a healthy gut microbiome, it will want to eat what feeds it best. And that happens to be fiber rich foods, which happen to be the healthiest foods: plants, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and legumes. Growth and development as well. So important what we eat for growth and development. If you think about your child as a newborn, they grow so incredibly fast. Their bones are growing, their eyesight develops, their brain is getting bigger, and it's taking in so much new data as they process things. Their muscles are getting bigger and stronger. Their immune systems are not fully developed until at least 2 years of age. And all these processes require nutrients. And while calories, which equal energy, are vitally important, micronutrients, which are vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and phytochemicals, are really, really crucial for optimal health. These come primarily from plant foods. The day-to-day can feel really hard. I'm there with you. It can feel like a battle sometimes, maybe even a war, but I promise you it is worth persevering on your feeding journey. But that does not mean striving for perfection. So let me put that out there right now, too. That is not my goal for anyone. So, what's creating the picky? There's multiple factors. I know in the moment we can feel like it's just because they're stubborn or because their mission in life is to make our lives harder. I know, trust me. The first thing to remember is that everyone is designed to be drawn to higher calorie foods, not just your kids, you too. When humans were created a long, long time ago, grocery stores and refrigerators did not exist. Food was gathered and foraged. It's a natural survival instinct to prefer high calorie, easy to acquire food. When food was scarce, the body needed high calorie options when they were available. Yet today, food is not scarce. There's an overabundance of it, but our biological design still causes us to gravitate towards those foods when they are readily available to us. For instance, the donut versus the apple. There was actually a really recent study in 2020 that looked at foods that participants could readily relocate in a computer based spatial map system using visual and small memory cues. And it was consistently seen that they had an enhanced memory for locating the high calorie foods over the low calorie foods. So I'm curious, what foods do your kids prefer? Go ahead and put it in the chat. And I'm curious if we see some themes. Bread. Yes. Yep. Not surprised. Bread. My daughter loves bread too. That was actually something that I held off introducing for her because I didn't want it to replace what she was eating. Sweet food, of course. Pizza. Pizza's like bread plus the cheese, plus if you get some meat going on there. Sweets, cheese, apples. Yay, Lacey, that's awesome. Eggs, gluten-free bread for sure. Yeah, noodles. Yeah, bread, noodles. Yeah. Awesome. She loves fruit. Yes, I actually didn't put something specifically in here, but you guys, let me emphasize to you, fruit is so good. Do not try and limit your kids' fruit. it's going to be so challenging for them to overeat on fruit, and it's incredibly, incredibly nutrient rich. It's a great thing too if they have a sweet tooth to just be like, here's all the fruit you could possibly eat. And like I said, there's so much fiber in it that they're not going to be able to sit there and eat like 10 apples. It's different than if they were having 10 donuts that just condense down. So fruit sugar is okay. Please don't be scared of it. Your daughter will only eat fruit if you let her. You know, you might be surprised if you really only let her eat that, she might eat something else. I think sometimes it comes down to we don't let it happen, and so then they don't have that opportunity for their natural instinct to kick in and say, "Oh, actually, like I've been satisfied by that. I'm full now. I feel okay." Awesome. Okay. Yes, I'm so glad your kids all like fruit. So, normally, if kids are eating animal products, their preferences fall more to the meat and dairy category, um, bread as well, since most omnivores would still obviously eat bread. For plant based kiddos, it's more likely grain based foods or possibly potatoes because these are those higher calorie foods. And of course, when processed foods come into the picture, they are the upper echelon of densely packed calories. So I share this because I want you to know that you can feel like you're trying to do everything you possibly can to get the colors of the rainbow into their belly. And part of the challenge is that you're fighting your child's biology. So use that information to have grace on yourself and grace on your child, that they're simply reaching out for a survival instinct that few people actually need to utilize, but it's still a part of us. So I want to focus on you for a second, and then I'll tell you a little about me. If you're really hungry, what do you crave? Are you ravenous for leafy greens? Or if you're driving home from work, does the nearest fast food restaurant sound appealing? This just happened to me earlier this week, almost like I needed this example to share. But we went to the grocery store as a family after work and got what was on our list and headed to the car. And at that moment, I was just hit by the fatigue from the day. And I knew when I got home, I still had to make the food I was planning on. So my body thought, hey, I'm hungry and tired. And so I want to conserve energy. You should just go out to eat. And honestly, my husband was on board with that. So I really had to focus on talking myself out of it. And I did make the decision that I could go home and I could do that. But going out to eat is almost always going to be the more calorie dense option, and certainly easier to just sit there and have food delivered than making it yourself. Not always less time, I will point out, but less energy expended. So I did get myself home. I made a meal that was absolutely delicious. It was ready really quickly, but it took a little extra effort and energy. And it took these processing skills that young children just don't have. I mean, if you've got an 18-year-old, you could work with them on that. But for somebody who is a toddler or elementary age, and even honestly middle school, that's a lot for them to be able to process the way that I did. That biology in them is going to drive them to make a decision if they were in this situation. And they'd be like, well, yeah, I'm for sure eating out. So the next type of obstacle is hyperpalatability. Have you ever heard of this term? Food manufacturers spend billions of dollars to make sure that what they make will sell. They have chemists and biologists, psychologists, and marketing gurus who play a role in making sure those who eat their products will come back for more. Have you ever eaten just one chip, one Oreo, one French fry? I definitely have not on any of those counts. Those companies who make them need to ensure you eat as much as possible so they can profit as much as possible. We can tell ourselves they're an occasional treat or something that we eat in moderation, but don't think for a minute that they were created with the goal of being something you eat on occasion. Those companies would not profit if they were not staple purchases in people's grocery carts. And I just want to have the briefest side note. I don't love using the term moderation when it comes to food. It has a really arbitrary definition. What it means to me, to you, to every single person on this webinar tonight is very different. So I just don't like using it. I'd rather talk about making mindful choices than moderation. So, you also may have a super taster on your hands if you feel that your child is the ultimate picky eater. We all think our children are pretty super, right? Well, your kids' superpowers might include tasting, which could be a really cool thing someday. The younger the child, the less they've tasted, obviously, and every new taste could be jarring to those super taste buds. And this is why it can take many tries for them to feel okay eating what you're offering them. The last thing that I feel obligated to bring up regarding what causes our kids to be picky is we do. And honestly, I said we to try and soften the blow, but I do think while acknowledging there are biological actions at play, that you are the root person responsible for your child's eating habits. This is not to blame, shame, or guilt you. It is hard work and no one is perfect. I am certainly not perfect, but I'm a fan of the Maya Angelou quote, which you have likely heard: do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better. Why will your child only eat chicken nuggets, noodles with butter, cheese quesadillas? Who introduced those foods to them? I've never fed Summer these foods, which I in no way share to place myself on a pedestal. Please hear that. Just trust me that I'm not a perfect parent. If you want to come observe, you're more than welcome. But I knew going into feeding her from my experiences with kids that it would only make my job harder if her taste buds knew that if she didn't eat her vegetable soup, there were nuggets in the freezer. I was pretty strict too about not feeding her sugar until she was 2. And she still has only had sugar maybe in like an occasional sauce if we're eating out, but not in a food like ice cream, cake, cookies, and donuts. Partly because I know sugar can weaken her immune system, which is still developing, but again, because she doesn't know what she's not having. Right now, I can give her a popsicle made from blended fruit and frozen in a mold, and she knows absolutely no difference from something bought at the store. Heck, I can literally give her frozen peas and she thinks it's a treat because she doesn't have something to compare it to. I am that mom. I've had people make comments to me that she'd really like fill in the blank. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I have no doubt that if I gave her the ice cream, she would love it. But she doesn't need it and she doesn't know. And she has yet to show any indication of feeling left out. So at some point, we will offer her choices within boundaries. I know that that is in our future. But while your kids are young, I recommend trying to keep their diets as whole as possible. So those are kind of the top reasons that picky eaters can come to be. And now this is huge. Our word choice. It is a big one, you guys. I cannot emphasize enough that words we speak out loud over our children have power. And even things we think can translate into our attitudes and demeanor and have an impact on them and on us too. Our thoughts are powerful too. So while I did include picky eater in the title of this webinar, I would say that my biggest piece of advice that I want to share this entire webinar is for you to stop calling your kid picky. It totally goes against common cultural vocabulary. I get it, but it needs to stop. Your child has preferences. That they may be strong preferences. They may be preferences that you wish they did not have. You need just to start referring to them as preferences. I don't know anyone who hears the word picky and thinks of it as a good thing. So let's be honest with ourselves that it has a negative connotation. And I know that you would never intentionally speak negatively over your child. You want the best for them. I know that because I'm a mom too. We're all trying to create the best life we can for our kids. And I don't doubt that for a second. To get you in the frame of mind about the power of words, I'd encourage you to think about something that's been spoken over you in your life that may not have had an ill intention, but it just didn't sit well and you didn't really like the label. For me, I was labeled as a goody two shoes for a lot of my life. And I was a very straight laced kid, so I get it. And it wasn't untrue, But calling me a goody two shoes didn't feel like a compliment. It felt more like a dig. And I didn't feel uplifted by it. And I felt stuck in it. So it just kind of became me. I've seen adults who eat a very limited diet. In fact, we have a good friend who, to this day, in his mid 30s, will order a plain burger with just the bun, the meat. That's it. He was actually a very good childhood friend of my husband's, and he was labeled picky by his parents and his peers. He brought a Lunchable for his dinner when he spent the night at my husband's house. I know this because it was literally one of the first things my husband told me about his good friend when we were just dating. So that is how much of a label his friend got as being a picky eater. If he hadn't been labeled as picky and instead it was acknowledged as just having strong preferences, and his parents took the advice that I'll continue to share with you, I have a feeling he'd be eating differently as an adult. Part of what makes me think that is that since he got married, his wife has started to encourage him to expand his horizons, and he has. It just took the right positive encouragement. So I have hope for absolutely everyone, no matter how old they are. Please do not tell a child what they don't like, okay? I've heard this countless times. I've taught cooking classes and had parents tell me what their kid won't eat, and then they eat that food in class. If you were told you didn't like something or it wasn't for you or you didn't like it, does it make you want to try it? Does it sound fun? Sure, your child may not like something, but what if they do? What if this time is the time that they do? Can you give them the chance to figure it out? And if they didn't like something last week, every time that food is around, give it to your child with a clean slate. Kids' taste preferences change incredibly quickly. I observe that some days when Summer acts like avocado is the least of the things that she would want to eat. And then the very next day, she wants to eat an entire avocado like it's her favorite thing. I mean, it literally doesn't make any sense. But ask yourself how many nonsensical things your child does. If there is one thing I have learned as a parent, it is that kids are weird and it takes way too much energy to try and make sense of them. So just don't waste your energy on that. Don't speak about food being gross. Don't say that it's yuck or ooh, or that you wouldn't eat something over your dead body. Be the adult, okay? If you don't want your child to say ew or yuck to what you made, set an example, and that is not how you talk about food. Show them that even as an adult, you can take small tastes to gauge how you feel about a food. I was in my mid 20s before I developed a taste for beets. I would make comments that I did not care for them. They were not my preferred vegetable. If they were around, I would just take a very small bite to see, and I was usually like, nope, still not for me. But I kept trying them in those small bits. So when they were presented, and then one time, a dear friend who sadly recently passed away made a beet salad with balsamic dressing, and my taste buds loved it. Over 20 years it took me to get there. And now I absolutely love beets. And that's only 20 years. Hopefully, I have decades left to enjoy this super nourishing vegetable. So, however long it takes, it is worth it. And lastly, when it comes to your word choice, don't say that you'd rather die than give up, fill in the blank. It drives me crazy to hear adults make this statement. I'm like, really? That's how much you value life? That it isn't worth living without bacon? What if you'd never had bacon? So while you may think it's said in jest, kids don't always pick up on that kind of humor. I also question sometimes with the way people say it, how much humor they're actually saying it with versus they really feel that way. And regardless, it puts food into the place of being an idol. Personally, as a Christian, I don't believe anything should be an idol. Nothing should be valued more than our life. And it's just a poor example to set for our kids. So, moving into how to get kids involved. This is a huge part of getting kids excited about healthy food. Create opportunity for kids to be involved with food. This can start with meal planning. From a young age, ask your child what they like, what they want, make it a conversation. Allow them to talk about food and express their feelings about it. I'm a big fan of choices with boundaries. You could give them 3 healthy meal options and ask which one they want on Monday. If they ask for quesadillas often, that's just an example. Um, why not explain to them that, that's not an everyday meal, unless you use one of my quesadilla recipes that are actually dairy free but full of lots of plants in the plant based cheese that I make. If you go grocery shopping, take them at least sometimes. Allow them to put things in the basket. If they're little and your grocery store has those carts that look like a car they can drive, create an experience around it. Make it fun and exciting for them to be a part of bringing healthy food into the home. One of my favorite days in my kids' classes that I would teach was taking them to the grocery store on a field trip. They would each get to pick out an item from the produce section that they wanted. And this gave them a healthy boundary, but also so much variety to choose from, and they felt really empowered. I would always have some kids who asked about getting candy, and I just calmly explained that their options were in produce. And by the time we left, everyone was so excited with what they had picked. There was definitely a lot of fruit, but I was always surprised sometimes by one girl just wanted a single carrot and she loved carrots and that is what she wanted. I have a picture of her somewhere and it just means so much to me because she was absolutely darling with it. I try and do this with Summer as well. We have a produce stand where I live, and I needed her to go on a walk with me to get some produce. And so I was like, I'm going to let you get a treat when we get there. And I let her pick out anything that she wanted. And she chose a fresh pint of strawberries. Very smart girl, since our strawberries are in season right now. Also, if you can go to a farmer's market, that's another really fun outing where your kids can see healthy food even a little bit closer to the source. If you could get to a farm, that's super fun as well. Maybe encourage them to ask the farmer selling their goods if they like how they grow them or how they harvest them. Anything that gets them a little bit more in touch with that food can be huge. I actually hadn't planned to talk anything about gardening. I'm also not like a super green thumb, but if you can get your kids in a garden, that is, oh my gosh, they get so excited. It's phenomenal what they're willing to eat when they've actually planted the seeds and tended them and grown it. I'm just not the expert on that. When you get home from shopping, wherever it is, the farmer's market, the grocery store, the produce stand, have your kids help carry things inside and put them away. This will look different for different ages, of course, but even at 2.5, Summer loves to help. She, the other day, wanted to carry an entire grocery bag that probably weighed half of what she does, but couldn't. So I just give her 1 or 2 items, and she loves being able to help with that. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of having your kids a part of food prep and cooking. Of course, this as well will look different at different ages and stages. And since you've likely already thinking about the mess, I want you to know I'm there with you. I know it very, very well. And even for someone who teaches the importance of kids cooking, I struggle at times to welcome Summer into the kitchen with open arms, but it really is worth it. And I just continue to repeat that in my head. One day I had a realization as well that I don't think cleaning up after her is actually that much more than cleaning up after myself. Maybe you're cleaner than I am. I don't know, but I feel like an extra wipe of the counter or a sweep of the floor doesn't take that long, and it's so valuable. Um, Also, if she wasn't in the kitchen, she'd probably be making a mess somewhere else in the house and I'd have to clean that up. So you can think about that too. Cooking with a kid is going to take extra time than cooking by yourself. And if you don't need to include them every single day. But I want to impress upon you that every aspect of parenting is going to take time and patience. And that working to include your kids towards their healthy food habits is well worth that time investment. I have never ever seen something as powerful as having them be a part of the process. So I have a few ideas of how to get your kids involved. One is have them build a salad. It's away from any kind of heat. So that's good for the younger ages, that you're not like fearful that they might burn themselves. If you pour dressing over a kale salad, they can massage it into the leaves, clean hands, of course. Or they can just dump lots of different toppings into a big bowl of spring mix and toss it with their hands. They love getting their hands into food. You could even just sit them down with a bunch of cilantro and ask them to pluck the leaves off. It's shocking the things that can actually be really enjoyable to them that you might find the tedious work. So maybe you can find the perfect little helper for some of those jobs that you don't love as much. You can ask them what they want in their salad and tell them this is their creation. Again, with parameters, you're not necessarily saying they can put candy corn in their salad, but they can put in whatever you're laying out for them, or talk through what they know is in the house and what they want. It can make them feel so incredibly empowered. When they're little, you can hold them and they can help you stir. You can have them pour measuring cups you've put things in into bowls, let them press buttons, flip switches. Just bring them into the kitchen and help them, or allow them to watch what you're doing. It can all make a difference. And as they get older, I encourage you to give them more ownership over meals, potentially even asking them to make dinner one night a week or a month. Believe in them, and I really guarantee they can surprise you. I have had so many parents tell me that from the kids that I've had in classes before. When it comes to cleaning, involve them in that too. This picture was just today, earlier this morning. Summer got drips of her smoothie all over the floor because she was like taking her straw out that I wasn't sure was a good idea to give her, but I did. And she just dripped it all over the floor. So I said, okay, you have to clean it up. I handed her a damp cloth and asked her to clean it. And she did. She actually did a really good job. Even got it on a chair and she wiped it off that too. The earlier you start these patterns, the easier it will be on you. If your kids are of the age where they say, well, I've never had to do that before, I would encourage you to sit down as a family and discuss things that you want to change. Make everything really positive. Tell them that you're excited to have them help in the kitchen. You want them to voice their opinion, but that when anyone makes food, that person deserves respect. You can tell them it's okay if they do not enjoy the food, but you want them to take one bite, not two, not three, one bite. And if they don't like it, they can have leftovers of a different meal. When kids are younger, I recommend making dinner be what dinner is planned to be. But when a child is old enough to figure out their own plan B, then you could do so with parameters. Have fun. This is huge. Oh my gosh. My approach to feeding kids is that it should always be fun. That doesn't mean cupcakes and ice cream sundaes. It means having as much fun with broccoli and grapes as society tells us that we get from cupcakes and sundaes. I've had parents tell me that they can't believe their kids eat what they do in my classes that I teach. And I swear I don't have any kind of magic ability to get kids to eat things that you can't. And I'm experiencing that with my own child now. I've been practicing this with other people's kids for years. And now having my own, I feel like I have a lot of success, but I do make it fun. It comes down to getting them involved, making it a positive experience. The words we use, our body language, and stress that we bring to the dinner table are all a part of this. Not every meal has to be a party or elaborately crafted. Your kids do not need to partake in every dinner making. I just encourage you to have a good attitude around food, mealtime, and your child's developing and evolving preferences. So, some things I encourage you not to do. Don't do it. Don't be a short order cook. I know parents that do this do so because they love their child. And you may be worried that if your child isn't eating dinner, they're going to starve and die. I find that us parents can be just as dramatic as our children. Let me assure you, your child will not die if they do not eat what you made for dinner. In fact, truly hungry kids will eat, and the food will actually taste even better. We've become a food-focused society. Food is so readily available, and snacks have become embedded in our days. If your child has been snacking and dinner isn't their favorite, they may say they don't want it. They're not hungry. If you put the butter noodles down, they may eat those because they know how much they like them. That biological design is kicking in of, ooh, a high calorie food, and I don't know when I might eat again, even though they're going to eat again. But they weren't hungry for that either. So just because they eat something else you put down doesn't mean the level of hunger is any different. My advice is establish a boundary that what is for dinner is all there is for dinner. If you're not operating a restaurant, and when it's time to eat, you sit down to eat. Don't give up and make them something else. While they may not be hungry at first, which you can tell them is totally fine, maybe they'll start picking at it in 5 minutes or 10 minutes or right when you're about to clear plates. Not very long ago, Summer didn't want to eat whatever we had made for dinner. She said she didn't like it. And from a 2.5-year-old, she does have a really good vocabulary, but I still don't think that she's capable of expressing things that she just like, whether she doesn't like it or she's not hungry, it all kind of gets wrapped together. So we told her that she should just keep sitting with us. We happened to be at the table for a lot longer that night because we were signing paperwork for refinancing our house. But after a while, out of nowhere, Summer just started eating, and she finished a sizable bowl of that food. We just never made a big deal about it. Kids have really keen natural instincts, really keen natural instincts. I love observing them. And when they're hungry, they will eat. In the interim, I just don't make a big deal about it. I don't angrily say, well, this is what's for dinner. I stay calm and I just let her figure out what her body needs. And same thing when I would teach kids cooking classes. If they didn't want to eat it, I said, okay, and they could take it home. Don't feed your children only the 3 things that they like. This is kind of a new phenomenon in our day and age. Once upon a time, there may have been 3 things a child didn't like. Now, kids have very, very narrow food preferences. And the more that we cater to those, the less opportunity they have to keep tasting and expanding their preferences. Don't make meal times a battle. When you go low, or when they go low, you go high. Just don't make it a battle. Be nonchalant, don't overreact, stay happy, deep breaths, remember patience and perseverance. Don't stress, your child is going to be fine. I swear this is not a picture of Summer, but it could be, except this child is not bald. Summer is starting to get hair though, after 2.5 years. She could be in her seat, and some of it is going to be up to you and your family and what you want to instill. Personally, if she wants to sit on my lap and it gets her to eat her vegetables, I'm happy with that. If she wants to wander around a little bit before coming back to eat, I'm okay with that. But just don't stress about if your child isn't sitting down to eat exactly the way that you think they should. Try and pay attention to, have they had a snack in any kind of a recent time frame? Their bellies are small, they can fill up quickly. Don't bribe, bargain, or coerce. I bet every parent has done this before. Ryan and I certainly have. It's really hard not to. Oftentimes it's because we think that they need to eat more, but who are we to say? If you feel satisfied and someone were to say to you, just 2 more bites, how would that feel? Weird, right? Like, excuse me, but I've had enough, thank you. Kids' bellies are really small. Most parents dish servings for their child that is bigger than they need. And again, if they aren't eating much at all, are they truly hungry? If your child is not losing weight, if they are developing appropriately, they're getting sufficient calories. I have had yet to meet a child that's not getting sufficient calories. I have met hordes of kids not getting an abundance of micronutrients. So we feed Summer a plant-based diet. And the typical advice from most pediatricians is that if a child's eating a plant-based diet, a vegetarian diet, that we need to carefully plan her diet to ensure she gets enough nutrients, which I think is really funny because there are vastly more nutrients in plant foods than animal foods. And I have not heard a pediatrician say to parents feeding their kids an omnivorous diet that they need to carefully plan their diet to get adequate fruits and vegetables. I mean, in general, we should just be mindful of getting healthy foods into our kids. And I would not say that one needs more careful planning than the other. So, while aspects of what I'm recommending I know can feel like more work, my end goal is to help make your life easier, both now and going forward. In the long run, putting in the work it takes now can help your child's palate expand to include all sorts of healthy foods. Making transitions away from unhealthy foods now can lessen what feel like battles later. Sugar, for instance, is something that I saw come up numerous times in the registration form for the event. Do you have sugar in your home? I would recommend getting rid of it or most of it and the things that contain it. If it's there, they'll eat it. If it's there, you'll eat it. And if it's a birthday, have a pint of ice cream. I'm not saying to yourself, but get a pint of ice cream to share as a family, celebrate, enjoy, and then it's gone rather than having gallons of ice cream that you're eating on a daily basis. As we head into summer, if you want to have a campfire with s'mores, excellent. Live it up. But if you keep marshmallows on hand at all times, it's no longer a treat. It's something everyone reaches for regularly. Cane sugar is not an essential nutrient. It also is not the worst thing in the universe. So, teaching your kids mindfulness around their consumption of it is key. And teaching them through setting the example is really, really my top recommendation. I don't recommend having rules about eat your dinner and you can have a sugar treat. That can set up the belief that sugar equals happiness and that sugar equals a reward. And that can lead to teaching your kid subconsciously that if they feel bad, sugar is the answer. Think about how many hard days you have. And if you use sugar to cope through all of them, it really doesn't lead to a great outcome. So just make it an occasional food that doesn't hang out in the cupboard. That's my advice with that. Take the pressure off your kids and off yourself. Take everything a meal at a time. Do the best you can and take the pressure off of them to instantly start liking all the things. If you can transition to them to brown rice over white, that's a huge nutrient upgrade. Whole wheat pasta over white flour pasta, upgrade. Getting one veggie on their plate from none, then shifting to two. Aim for something green every day. Give them as much time as they need, even years, to let their taste develop for these foods. Rather than saying you must eat what is in front of you, play it cool. Calmly tell them this is dinner, and if you aren't hungry, that's okay. You trust them to listen to their body. Stress less, y'all. If you're a ball of stress, it will pass on to your whole family. Stress is contagious. Again, just do the best you can. Your child will be okay, and you're doing great. Okay, deep breath. Just make one dinner, not four, not even two. If you've been making multiple dinners for different preferences in your home, you've got to stop. Talk about stress inducing. No wonder you hate meal times. If you're convinced that your child must eat and they will not eat what you've come up with, then you can think about some plan Bs. We've been known to open a can of beans for summer and rinse them, and there she goes. That's plan B. The girl really likes her beans. Leftovers can work, but whatever you do, just don't resort to those hyper palatable processed foods, as easy as they might feel to pull out. Frozen taquitos, throwing a quesadilla together. Don't teach them that they can have that in exchange for not eating the healthy meal you prepared. I can't emphasize enough that doing so is making your life so much harder, and it's setting your child up for a longer path back towards the health you desire for them in the future. Don't fight your child. I do not want meal times to be a fight for you or a battle, so just don't battle. Honestly, if you start digging your heels in, your kid will likely respond by digging theirs in. If you show them that their response to dinner is not bothering you, they've lost their audience. And most of the time, it de escalates any form of conflict that was about to ensue. Consider this: If all your child wants is chicken nuggets, why is that? Biology? Yep. Hyperpalatability? Yep. But would they want the chicken nuggets if they hadn't ever had them? As I said, Summer hasn't had them, and so she's never asked for them. I know it's a bit too late for some of you not to feed your child some of these foods, but really consider what you feed them now and how often and what they tell you that they want. And then how do you respond to that? Do you respond by giving them that food that ideally you don't want them to have when they're refusing to eat the other one? You have to be the parent in these situations. I held off allowing Summer to have chips for quite a while, and then we got off a long travel day last fall. It was late, and we were at a family event that had little other for her to eat. So we were like, okay, you can have some chips. You better believe that she wanted more and more and more. And now, if there are chips around, that girl knows they're around. She wants those chips. And I'm not worried that a few chips here and there are going to wreak havoc on her. I'm not worried that if your child has one meal of chicken nuggets or a quesadilla here and there, that is like the end of their health by any means. But I am keenly aware that it makes my job that much more challenging by having to draw her attention away from the chips and back to the nutrient dense food that I want to fill her with. I know at least one person attending has tried so many things to get her daughter to engage with healthy foods. I'm hopeful that there are still nuggets I've dropped that may be able to be implemented. But if you do try everything, and feel like nothing is an instant success, I'm sure you're hoping for some instant success, because who doesn't want a magic bullet for their problem? Even though I don't think they really exist. I have to end by imploring that you have patience and that you persevere. I hope I've shared with you enough as to the importance of feeding your kids healthy, but above all, I mean, we can just love them. But after unconditional love, I truly believe the way you set them up for success in their lifelong health could possibly be the next greatest gift that we can give a child. And as you're now learning, even future generations. Remember that it can even impact your grandchildren. Some people have said that it takes at least 17 tries of a food to develop a taste for it. I personally don't think that those people have children of their own. I don't think there's a number I can promise you. It could be hundreds of tries. It could take a year. It could take 5 years. It could take 10 years, all 18 years. For me and Beats, 25-ish years. But if you keep putting the food in front of your child, you may one day be shocked. They could shock the socks off of you that they like it. But if they aren't given the opportunity, they certainly never will. If you're told that they don't like something, they most likely will not. If they're told that they're picky, they probably will be. Your secret weapon in all of this is persistence and perseverance and patience. I'm guessing that some of you have picked up some new ideas to implement, or maybe I've helped you think outside the box you felt stuck in. I hope that you'll be mindful of the words you choose to describe your child and their eating habits. There may also be someone sitting here thinking, I knew all of this. This was not new. I did not promise rocket science. And when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about having Summer as a newborn and how the things that I did felt so easy individually. Changing diapers, feeding her, holding her, that was pretty much it. Like the day to day, the actual things I was doing were not hard, but it was the hardest time of my entire life. I bet that we can all agree that parenting is not rocket science, but it's a lot of hard work. It takes a ridiculous amount of patience. We have to persevere on a daily basis. And at the same time, it can be incredibly rewarding, right? Feeding our kids is no different. So if you feel like you're doing all the things, then I commend you. You're on the right path. My encouragement to you is don't get off the path. Don't give up. It's too important to give up on. And give yourself space to breathe. Give yourself and your child grace. You can't do more than you can do, you know? If you're able to release the stress or anxiety you feel around meal times and trust you're doing what needs done, that can be monumental in making your life easier. We often try to do more to make it better. Sometimes what we need to do is less, and worrying less is certainly beneficial. My faith is a big driver in my life, including how I eat and choose to feed Summer. I love these verses from Philippians regarding worry on the graphic here. Don't worry about anything, instead, pray about everything. Philippians 4:6-7 fully says, "Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus." And I just like to rest in that because it's a huge why for me. And it's a great reminder, whatever your why is, maybe this doesn't speak to you, maybe it does, but find your why. Maybe it's for your grandkids, maybe it's for your child's health, maybe it's because you weren't set up with the best health, but find your why and have those words to live by. Oops. All right. So if you are feeling overwhelmed in your journey and you want more support, I want you to know that I am here for you. This is exactly what I do. I have actually spent the last month working with a family of four who came to me struggling to get their kids to eat what they made. They had some health concerns for one of their child. They found planning and prepping and eating just wasn't going well for them. So I helped them create a tailored meal plan, grocery list, prep plan, and gave insights specific for their family. And in the days and weeks that have followed, I've received text messages and pictures of the kids excited about the foods they're eating. The parents are feeling so much less stress because they know that what they're going to be making is nourishing their kids and they have a plan, and the kids are enjoying trying the new things. The investment that they've made now has quickly made some positive changes in making life less stressful, but they are also setting their kids up for a lifetime of good health, and those healthy habits can then be passed on to future generations. I was thinking that when people talk about generational wealth, is there really anything more valuable than the wealth of good health? We have power to plant seeds of good health for generations to come. It is truly incredible. I also have the Plantiful Plate meal plan subscription that I mentioned at the beginning. So if you just want recipes, it comes every Friday. You get recipes and a shopping list. You get access to me through a members only Facebook group. And that can be a great option for people who just need a little bit of support without necessarily the like weekly processing and individual planning. I am also going to drop the PDF download in the chat for you. I thought I might need to find my link to that for you. But I am ready for any Q&A that you have. So if you've got questions that have come up, I also have the things that you shared with me about in your registration. So I thought I'll see if you've got questions here, but then I can also address a few of the things that were shared. So let me see what we've got. Okay, so Louise, you want to know, what if your child refuses to eat and then wants a snack 20 minutes later? I would personally not force eating when they say that they're not hungry. 20 minutes later, I would just say, okay, great. Here's dinner. Like, it's the same food. So they don't get to dictate that they want a different snack later. They just get the food that was presented to them. I wouldn't push hard. If their body is not hungry at dinner time, I understand that it can be hard because we ideally want to compartmentalize, but sometimes kids actually do better eating more meals throughout the day with their snacks to get in the calories that they need, depending on how big their stomachs are. Obviously, little kids, littler stomachs. Yeah, the snack struggle later. I mean, you're going to have to work with her to figure out if, did you say her? Sorry, I thought it was a her, but so I would say that you let them know, okay, if you're hungry later, this is still what you're going to have. This is what we have available. It's not that you can then go have chips or crackers or whatever. And Lacey, let's see. So your child is 4.5. Gosh, that is crazy. I remember when you were pregnant. Yeah. So how do you go from being a short order cook who is just feeding what he would eat because he was exhausted, and how do you undo the bad habit? I would start with a conversation. At 4.5, he's old enough for you to explain that this is how things are going to go now, and try again to make it fun is my recommendation. So if you're saying, this is what's for dinner, but you can be a part of that, that could potentially help the process. And that doesn't mean the two of you need to be in the kitchen for an hour. It could mean he gets to help garnish it, or he gets to dump something in, or he gets to flip the switch of the blender, like I said. And then again, patience and perseverance. It might not go great the first time. It might take weeks. It could potentially take months. I pray for you that it doesn't. I really do. And if you can try and find versions of things he likes, a lot of kids really like noodles. So if you know that the thing that he has asked for before is noodles, try and find a noodle dish that he's going to enjoy that has more vegetables in it, or maybe has a homemade sauce versus store-bought sauce. Those are some ideas with that. Laura needs an idea for babysitters. Yeah, pizza, chicken nuggets, easy for babysitter to prepare. So kids like pizza. I would recommend doing personal pizzas. You can use English muffins. You can use tortillas. Store-bought marinara sauce is fine. Lots of veggie toppings, and something that really comes together quickly that can just go in the oven briefly, and a babysitter should be able, if they can do chicken nuggets, they can do this style of pizza. Pita pizzas too. So just any kind of, like, you get it, like a flatbread that you could turn into pizza. Otherwise, you could, of course, if you're already making something for your family, having a large batch of it made so they just reheat it. Soups. Most people here know I do all plant-based food. And so like a macaroni dish with a non-dairy cheese sauce on it, even if the cheese sauce was pre-made and they're just heating the noodles and mixing it all together, that would be another babysitter idea for you. Oh my gosh, Lacey. I know that's the thing, is that you guys, I know you've got a lot going on. I have a lot going on. Like we all do. And so all you can do is the best you can. And that could look differently every single day. And it's okay. All right. So if one day you've got it in you to get the kid in the kitchen and set your boundaries, then that's great. And if the next day where you're at in life is not quite there, that's okay too. So, I think consistency can be really, really helpful in all of this with our kids, but also give yourself grace. You absolutely deserve it. Oh, Eva, I am so glad. You may have already ducked out, but yes, you, my dear, are doing it right, and you just have to keep going. Yeah, for sure. I don't think, let's see. Oh, let's see. Oh, Lacey, okay, I see your question about taste buds changing every 7 years. Um, your taste buds are constantly dying off and growing. I don't know, that sounds a little bit weird imagining them growing. But there is truth to your taste buds changing. I think the biggest thing in terms of introducing new foods, though, is the repetition of getting accustomed to those flavors. And even if it takes years with certain things, I just don't think it's going to with everything. But the more you can just make it a normal thing. There's an example of, there's always a salad on the table, for instance, and maybe a child doesn't love the salad, but they just get like the tiniest serving, and maybe they just have that one bite that's required in your household. and they don't love it. But then you never know when all of a sudden that's what they want for dinner because it feels familiar. It's not a really like uncomfortable thing. That's big for kids, is having it feel comfortable and familiar, especially as they continue to grow and change. Just going back and seeing if I've got any other questions I missed. I don't think so. So one person had said that their husband eats plant-based and that they feel that kind of shames you and the kids for eating non-plant-based things. Oh man, that is hard. I would have a really real like heart to heart with your husband and let him know that you feel that way, that maybe he doesn't know it. And especially for I mean, honestly, for you and the kids, like shame just should not be associated with food. I always want to make that really clear. However you eat, however you feed your family, shame and food do not belong hand in hand. So you're doing the best you can. I would encourage you to keep doing that. And my best recommendation right now is to just have that heart to heart and make sure he understands how his words might make you feel, and maybe have conversations about why he's making the comments that he is, and come at it as like, I want you to know this makes me feel this way. I also really want to know where you're coming from and why you're saying these things. Laura, do you know any resources geared towards teaching kids about plant-based eating? Who there, I mean, there's this like little kid coloring book I have somewhere, but I don't remember how much it taught. I don't. I could look into it and let you know if I can find something. That would be an excellent thing. I was kind of in the process of creating a kids plant-based cooking class, a virtual class, and it just wasn't the right time. It's a huge endeavor, and I was taking on more than I really could do at the time. Gabrielle, mine will cook all day, and when it's time to sit down and eat, she won't. And if I force her, she'll make, oh wow, she'll make herself throw up. Yeah, I would try not to force. That's usually not a great way of having them stay open-minded to it. The fact that they will cook with you, that's fantastic. I would just say continue to have patience and persevere. And if she won't eat it, you can let her know, okay, this is what's for dinner. If she's learning that if she doesn't eat that, that she gets this other option, then that could potentially be part of it. And just see how that goes. But having them in the kitchen, honestly, is a really, it's huge. I've seen kids in my cooking classes and they get all excited about cooking, and then they they aren't as excited about eating it, but they are usually willing to try it. I would just, yeah, I would say the perseverance part is huge in those kind of situations. But feel positive, feel excited that she wants to be in the kitchen with you. Someone else said that my son is refusing to try new meals. He has a narrow scope of meals that he likes. He's been difficult to say that doesn't want what's for dinner. And you remember how bad it felt when your parents made you eat things you didn't like. So you don't want to do that to your son. I hear what you're saying. So in these situations, I would encourage you to still set boundaries and parameters rather than turning yourself into a short order cook. But you can do so in a way that isn't that fight or the battle or have negativity. My guess is whatever your parents did in your childhood that has stuck with you, it was because it felt really negative. And if you just let your kid know that, hey, I really like this food, I want you to be a part of it, this is what's for dinner, but hey, if you're not hungry, then you don't have to eat it. Let them kind of come to you and say, oh, well, actually, I'm hungry. I do want to eat it. But if you very quickly resort to, okay, you don't want this, then I'm going to get you something else, that's where you're starting to teach them that they don't have to eat what you make. And it makes both of your lives harder in the long run. We definitely talked about the bread. All right. Too many processed packaged foods in the house and kids who just want junk. Well, I got to tell you, if they're in the house, of course they're going to want them. Kids are keen. Like I said, if we have chips around, Summer knows it. And so if they're out and about, like that girl wants them. If you have packaged and processed junk food in the house, your child is going to want it. The best thing to do is just not have it in the house on a regular basis. Again, there's a time and a place where you can make that mindful decision that this is that time that we're going to allow this. But on a regular basis, I just would try and not have those foods there. Balancing healthy food with other adults in the house who give your child not so healthy food. You need to have a conversation with those adults who are giving that to your child and explain to them that this isn't okay. I mean, if these other adults are not the parent, then they need to understand what those boundaries are. And those conversations are not always comfortable, but you have to take care of your child in that way. Does anybody else have any other questions? I think that is kind of wrapping up a lot of what was there. I talked about sugar. Somebody asked something, it just said visual appearance and texture. So, visual appearance, I would try and encourage you to make the food look appealing. Colorful is always nice. If a child has issues with texture, trying to work with them on what those texture issues are. If they prefer crunchy or softer, you can try and make food that's crunchy or softer or add a crunch to a food if they like that. But without any more information than just that, I'm not sure how to expand on it. I think a lot of things continue to come down to that secret weapon of persistence and perseverance, though. So I encourage you to do that. I hope that this was helpful. If anybody wants to follow up and chat anymore about these topics, about helping your family on more of a one-on-one basis, please let me know. Emily@loveandplants.com. You should have emails from me from this event, so you can just reply right there. You can always hop on my website and use my contact form. But I'm so glad that you were able to join me tonight. Thank you so much for your time. I know it's getting late. Everybody's in different time zones too. So for some, it's like really late. And I'm sure we're all ready to wind down and hopefully get to bed. So thank you so much. And I need to just figure out how to end the webinar since this is all new, a new system for me. But thank you all. So, oh, I didn't drop the PDF in. Let me grab that for you. I have that right here. I want to make sure you get it. There we go. If you click this link, it'll take you to the PDF and you can keep it wherever. You can print it. Hopefully it's a really helpful resource for you. I'll give you all a minute to click that and have a great night.